Art is hard, okay? And animation is hard. Animation is super hard. It's not easy making a guy go up and hold something. You know, there's a lot of things happening with arcs and with things overlapping. There's a lot of a focus when it comes to animation. It needs to communicate a story without any words. If it's too confusing as an image, then there's an issue. You have an issue with your storyboards. And I was mesmerized by how this final product that I'm watching, I'm excited about, I'm laughing, how they make it, عرفت? How they go in and they draw design everything, they model them on the computers, they're working late at night, they're all goofy people, they're all enjoying what they're doing, they're laughing. They're like, oh, I want to create Naruto and he's a ninja, but he's in Saudi. No, create something that looks like your surroundings, or inspired by your surroundings.
In our lives, we cross different bridges. And what these bridges have in common is about our ability to communicate, be it through messages, through art, through stories, and even different languages. In this episode, we had a talk with Mahmoud Zaini, an animator and a director, about animation and what makes an animation so captivating for the audience. And does the public opinion really matter when the expert's opinion is there? Please do enjoy this episode. Thank you. You, as a creative, you worked in the corporate field and worked in the freelancing field. How would you differentiate from a creative mindset the way you approach things?
All right. يعني in a corporate environment, first of all, you always think about speed. You always think about practicality. You think about communication. You think about all these things. When you're freelancing, you might have more of freedom to act on your own time. You know, you can have your own schedule. You can set your own standards. However, when you're inside a corporation, no, you have to follow the corporation's standards and what they need exactly. Even if you write a script, usually when you're a freelancer, you can dictate sometimes to the client that, okay, I'm not taking this job, you know? But when you're in corporate, no, you're going to take this job, you're going to take this job, you know? You don't have that freedom the same way you have at freelance. In freelance, again, the same thing. You can, خلاص, you got a project, you say, I don't want this, I want this one, or I don't want this one. I can take these other 5 projects. When you're corporate, you're in 9 hours and you're going to do these 10 projects and that's what you're going to do, right?
Mhm.
But yeah, that's the difference.
Yes, because there's one thing about as well. I've seen some of your live streams.
Hmm.
I haven't seen them all, just a bit of it. And one of the things that I've noticed from you, and I believe you and a lot of creative people share, is that I wouldn't say annoying, but I believe some people who have OCD and creativity have it, which is that attention to details, every frame, every single thing. When animation, the drawing. So I believe sometimes when you put an animation ad, you go through it, each frame, what's happened, how it has happened, and so on and so forth.
Mm.
So freelancing versus corporate. Does that attention to details increase, decrease? Does it also add to that practicality or not necessarily?
Well, look, attention to detail. As an animator, of course, if you know in animation, you're working frame by frame usually. Everything, يعني, in filmmaking, you just bring a camera and you turn it on, and then it's recording what's happening. However, in animation, you have to draw and create each frame from scratch. So that's why, by design, as an animator, you're gonna have a big attention to detail. Does that attention to detail change depending on the environment or the type of project? Sure. If the project is practical and it's in a corporate environment, maybe, and it needs to be something where you communicate a message very quickly, you might disregard some things. However, when you're working on a project, maybe it's, let's say, for Red Sea Film Festival, or it's for something more, maybe for TV or a movie or something like that. No, you can't disregard details because it's an art project. You know, it's more of a project where quality is supreme, where your taste is valued there. However, in a corporate environment or for communication, your taste is okay, it's good. You can't have mistakes. You know, what you're doing can't have mistakes. It can't have obvious problems. However, if you disregard, let's say, shading, like you don't need to shade every frame, you can just keep it flat. خلاص, it delivers the message, you're okay. But that's the difference. يعني. Attention to detail doesn't go away. You can't have mistakes. And there are mistakes in art, by the way. I don't believe in this thing where art is just your own perspective. No, there are standards in art. And so you can't have mistakes. However, you don't need to add that extra polish that makes it super artistic when it's communication.
So you can be less artsy when it comes to
Yeah.
communication.
Yeah. Because in communication, the focus is the message. خلاص, I need to deliver this message, and let's say, what's the word, like the least amount of stuff that you can use to deliver that message. However, when it's more artistic, no, you care about the polish a lot more. You care about the little touches here and there. But yeah, again, you can't have mistakes for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go 2 steps back. Let's assume someone comes in. Okay, they've seen a lot of animation films, ads, so on and so forth, cartoon, whatever things that my people call, and they don't understand. Okay, what are the different types of animation? So from 101 perspective,
Yes.
ABC. Describe to me what's the animation world like. So what are the different kinds of animation, commercial versus film? How would you classify it or differentiate in that regard?
Okay. So, animation, as I said before, it's basically you are creating every frame from scratch, or you're not filming with a camera that captures reality. You have to create that reality from scratch. And so then you get different ways of animating. There's traditional animation where you actually draw with a pen on a digital screen or on paper, and that's just you drawing frame by frame. That's traditional animation. And then you have something called puppet animation. Some people call it uh, yeah, it's puppet animation. Basically, it's where you create your rig, or you create a character, a head, his arms, and they're all just single things that are done in a library, and then you connect them with bones, and then you move those. So that's called puppet animation. And then there is something where it's called stop motion animation. Stop motion animation is where you have clay figures or toys, and then you have a camera, and you have to take a picture, then move the character, take another picture, move the character. That's very tough, actually. Then you have motion graphics. Motion graphics. This is always confused. People always confuse motion graphics and animation. What's the difference? Animation, they're both animation. However, when you say motion graphics, it's about graphics. So there's a lot of graphic design. Usually, people who have graphic design experience, they would do motion graphics. Usually, they use vector files. This is a bit technical. But yeah, motion graphics are usually more informative. They're also corporate. Then you have experimental animation. Experimental animation is where you try to push the boundaries of what you're animating. You maybe create water droplets and then capture them and play around with, let's say, simulations and stuff like that. That's a very interesting realm. But yeah, these are all ways of animating. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, there are ways of animating, but there's also a whole world of animation for TV, or animation for a movie, or animation for an ad, or animation that you mix with filmmaking. So yeah, there's a lot of animation. Yeah, it's a big field, and there's 3D animation, of course. How can I forget? There's Pixar movies and Disney movies.
Because
Yeah.
that's a point. Because correct me if I'm wrong. Is motion graphic only limited to 2D, 2 dimensions, or is it also including the 3D as well?
Well, there is something as 3D motion design. Yes, there is, and they use a program called Cinema 4D. Um, but yeah, there is, and usually that kind of animation, or that kind of motion design, again, it will be more practical. It'll be informative, maybe. However, again, animation usually involves characters. Involves character animation, involves a storyline with dialogue.
Because it's always they kind of align these things together: motion graphics and infographics. Like they are
Exactly.
both intertwined, one way or the other.
Yeah, it became a tradition almost, or it became like well known that motion graphics is for companies that want to like explain a video or something, or explain a product or a service, usually for the most part. But animation is more about storytelling, or it's a movie or a short film, or it's a TV series. That's usually the difference.
Just out of the blue, I'd like to ask you a question.
Yeah.
What's your first encounter with animation where you said, I want to do that?
First encounter actually was since I was a little kid. Maybe like my earliest memories is me watching cartoons and enjoying them.
A name.
A name of a
A
cartoon.
name. Yes, I want a
It's
name.
probably Looney Tunes. Yeah, probably Looney Tunes. Yeah, yeah. Probably watching Looney Tunes on TV,
Looney
like
Tunes.
Bugs Bunny and stuff like
Wow.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
If you're talking a film, then Toy Story for sure.
Wh- wh- wh-
1999.
Which Toy Story?
Toy Story 1.
The first one.
Yeah,
Oh
the
yeah,
first
yeah,
one.
the
Yeah,
first
of
one.
course. Yani that for me,
Especially
maybe.
with Egyptian
Of course. Yeah.
dialogue.
The
Yes.
Egyptian dubbing was my favorite. And not only that, like an interesting story. The thing that really inspired me to go into animation was watching behind the scenes footage from these, yeah, from making these movies. صراحة, I always liked that, and my dad would always bring the behind the scenes extra VHS or the DVD, and we'd together sit down and watch. And I was mesmerized by how this final product that I'm watching, I'm excited about, I'm laughing, how they make it, عرفت? How they go in and they design everything, they model them on the computers, they're working late at night, they're all goofy people, they're all enjoying what they're doing, they're laughing. I always loved the process of making animation, and I think that's the major thing that made me love animation is the process. You know, when I'm working in animation, I'm like I'm really ecstatic. I'm happy. You know, I'm doing it. I'm laughing at my own jokes. I make a drum like, oh my god, this guy looks so silly. I make an animation. This timing is hilarious. And I've been making animation since I was like 10 years old. And I learned it was called Macromedia Flash at the time. Now
Okay.
it's called Adobe Animate.
Mhm.
I learned that as like a 9-year-old, 10-year-old on my own on my computer. I remember my uncle brought it home. He brought it to our house, like the CD, and I installed it. And he's like, "Yeah, just go on this tutorial, check it out." And I was mind blown. You know, I was, damn, I can take a little ball and move it across the screen. And I remember my first ever animation was done in PowerPoint. I like had a plane and made it go
Oh,
like this. I remember, wallah, in our old
old
house,
school,
Jeddah.
very old school.
Yeah, I was like, okay, how can I make a cartoon? I want to make an animation in any way possible. So I used PowerPoint and then I moved to Flash.
But here's a question: what if I bring it the other way around? So, for example, you tell me that making animation is enjoyable. At the same time, if I go, for example, when it comes to the anime world in Japan,
Uh-huh.
sometimes it sounds a bit hellish. In that regard.
Okay, well, that's an interesting point. أكيد يعني every project. Okay, art is hard, okay, and animation is hard. Animation is super hard because, like I said, you have to do every frame. You have to know a lot of skills. You know, you have to know all the principles of animation. You need to know how to draw. uh, there's a lot of detail when it comes to perfecting the physics of movement. You know, like they call it body mechanics. You know, it's not easy making a guy go up and hold something. You know, there's a lot of things happening with arcs and with things overlapping. There's a lot of a focus when it comes to animation. And so, of course, when you're in a big machine, a big company, and you're just one cog in that machine, and you have to do one task of like cleaning up one drawing, it's gonna feel hellish, yeah. And you're gonna have tight deadlines, and you're gonna be working doing something that is not yours. Sure. But what I was talking about was me doing my own stuff, you know, me like coming up with my own little stupid story. And I'm like, oh, I want to do this and I want to do it in my own way. I enjoyed it. However, if you're in a big studio and you're working on a project that's not yours with a director who's really mean and he wants things to look perfectly in this way, or you can't go off this character in this way, and that's just the nature of it, honestly. The nature of animation is every person working in that industry needs to have perfection in their work. The You can't have mistakes. Your characters, if you're gonna draw them, if you're doing it frame by frame, they need to look consistent. They need to follow the model. I'm a director, so I understand sometimes I can be also mean to some artists because things need to be perfect. You can't go off your guides.
So you are a very strong believer of perfection
Yes, yeah,
in
for sure.
everything.
Yeah, sure. Especially in animation, in whatever art I create. Yani, this is what differentiates people other from one artist from another artist. Some artists are okay with letting things go. You know, they're okay with maybe, okay, this thing here happened. Audience is not gonna see it. You know, they say this. You know, they say, oh, no one is gonna notice that. No. However, I think the extra mile when you go in and you actually polish every single little thing, when you pay attention to single little thing, it becomes way more valuable. You know, you feel that quality, you feel that sense of let's say care. You know, and a lot of artists, يعني للأسف, especially in an environment where you only care about the final product and delivering on time, or what kind of money you're gonna make, you forget about the value of quality. You know, you forget about care, taking care of your project, that this is something that resembles you. It doesn't just resemble the person you're giving it to. This is something that you're going to put in your portfolio, that people are going to look like and say, yeah, this is Mahmoud, this is his work, you know?
At the same
And
time, some people might say, correct me if I'm wrong,
mm,
that let's talk about these, as you just mentioned, these tiny little things that, as you mentioned, people would not notice. For
yes,
example, others would say, okay, even if I go that extra mile, not necessarily people would appreciate it in
yes,
that regard. So why make it hell for myself? Why make it hell for my team? As long as things are going well,
mm-mm.
the overall picture is coming together in a really good way. Why go that extra mile, so to speak?
That's a very good question. Um, Look, this again, this is the thing that's going to differentiate a director from another director. And if a director is going to just let the mistakes happen and let them pass by, I think he's gonna he's gonna really, يعني, he's gonna find it hard to create for himself an identity. Okay, and an identity for an artist is the most important thing, I believe. A director needs to have his own يعني standard, and if you disregard that standard and you keep disregarding it, eventually you're going to reach a point where you're going to always be doing that, you know. And if you always do that, if that becomes a habit of you letting go of the small little things, this will pile up, this will compound, and eventually you will end up being a mediocre artist. And I hate that. I would hate to be a mediocre animation director, or to have a project that is just average, you know, that looks just like everyone else. Okay, today I did this project, and I kept a few mistakes that people won't notice. When am I going to make something that doesn't have those mistakes? You know, what's the standard? So if you always try to have work that doesn't have mistakes, where you actually try to give your audience, yeah, this is actually a very good point. A lot of people look down on their audience, and I don't like that. A lot of people look at their audience and they're like, oh,
In,
they
in,
don't understand good
in
art.
what sense?
They say this audience, the audience doesn't understand good art, or the audience won't even appreciate, or the audience won't even. No, I care about lifting the audience's standard. You know, let's lift people's dog. Let's
Taste.
taste. Yes, why not? Yani people. Yani if you keep giving people bad quality, they're gonna just enjoy bad quality forever. You know, blacks. I want to lift people's taste, even sometimes if that goes against my timeline, or that goes against, يعني, okay, oh, I need to sleep today. No, why not? You know, I'll just take a few hours to make this even better. عرفت? So I feel like it's an obligation on artists and directors to actually make people's taste better, you know, like lift their tastes. Huh?
Okay. If that regard, let me give you a counter argument. I'd
Okay, go
like to hear your
ahead. Go
perspective
ahead.
on
Go
that.
ahead.
Now, creativity
Mm.
on the majority part is subjective.
Sure.
Subjective to a certain extent.
Mm.
Where, as you mentioned, to the point, I wouldn't say that an artist would say, look down on the audience. He would say to himself that they will not understand what I'm doing.
Hmm.
They will not have that full. They don't have the same appreciation of art as I have. So there will be that kind of misalignment. So I have a sense of art. That sense of art does not align with your sense of art as an audience. So that creates that misconception. What you see is beautiful. I would say it's mediocre in that regard. So wouldn't you say that it's part of our nature as human beings that, okay, it will always be subjective? You hear a piece of music, you might fall in love with it. I might not. I would say, what is this? This is not music at all. Same thing with art, same thing with animation. So how would you take that as an artist and as a director?
It's a big, this is a very big debate actually.
It is.
Is art appreciation and art values, are they subjective or are they objective? Is there an objective standard of beauty, or is it all subjective? This is a very big philosophical question actually. And so I personally believe there is an objective reality to beauty, and that's why we have art schools. Yani why are there any art schools? How is art even taught if there is no standard? You know, so if you want to do good art, you need to learn good perspective, how to do perspective. You need to study color theory. You study appeal, you study lighting, you study all these things. These are all things that give depth to an image, that give value, more value to an image. If you're just making art that's flat, okay, who's gonna like it? Maybe, I don't know, 10% of people, 5%. But the more you make it more valuable, you add more depth, the more you apply the principles of beauty to your piece, no, the more people will appreciate. So this is where I say, A person who's yeah, actually, this is a very interesting thing. They say, with poetry, sometimes some people, they hear a poem, they're like, I never heard any poems before, I don't know if this is a good poem or not. However, if you read a lot of good poetry books, then when you hear a poem, you're going to be like, oh, I like this poem, this is a good poem compared to all the poetry books that I know. However, if you learn all the principles of poetry, then you even have a bigger taste of even critiquing that piece of poetry. So this is why I believe actually that art is not totally subjective. There is an objective value in art. Sure, you're gonna have these variables of stylistic stuff. This is why you have very popular movies. Like, why do you have a movie that is well known by everybody to be great? If you actually analyze this movie, you're gonna find that this movie is working based on very good and rational principles that are used in art creation, in storytelling, etc.
Mhm. Now, with that, as you mentioned, now I believe that the further we go when it comes to, so for example, you say, okay, let's go back to your poem
Yeah.
example. So, yes, we'd say about poem as a poem in general. Now you're including everyone, okay, in that sense. Now, people who read some poems, now you've let's say shortened
Yes.
the number.
Yeah, yeah.
You reach to a point where the people who have that objective mindset is the very few.
Sure. Yes, yes.
So this is where it gets a bit. So it's like you're limiting the idea of critiquing or
Yeah, yeah.
criticizing any form of art, be it text, visual, or whatever, to a small number of people.
Yes.
Is that just?
Look, oh, interesting. Okay, we're going into justice. Again, I believe that just like we have professors, okay, who learn a science or learn a field of knowledge, why do we have teachers? Teachers come to the average person or to the average Joe who doesn't know to teach him. So I believe artists need to teach people good taste, and that's fine. And if artists are making very good art on a consistent level, and this is something that's supported always, then everybody will have better taste. Everybody, just like public, even public beauty, like in the streets. Why do we care about putting trees? Why do we care about putting a standard for homes? Why do we care about putting standards for architecture? All of this raises public taste, and when
Yeah.
you raise public taste, you have a better society. You have people who appreciate looking at beautiful things, and I think that's very important.
Now, with that in mind, again, another counter argument. We have a lot of counter arguments.
Let's
It's
go.
a very subjective thing.
Let's go. No, I'm okay. Keep going. Yeah.
Is the thing is that, okay, let's put it in this regard.
Go ahead.
You have a person, an artist,
Mm.
and you have the experts versus the public.
Okay.
And his or her art is appreciated by the public, but not appreciated by the experts, because you have a
Sure.
lot of let's say a lot of fields
Yes.
where a person might come up with a work. Like, for example, talk about you were in the agency marketing agency
Yes.
field,
Yes.
where an ad is being produced and published to the
Yes.
public. The public would appreciate it and say, wow, it's amazing, while the experts, they would say, no, it has these certain flaws, 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yes.
5.
Yes.
Because they go the extra mile of understanding the details and the message behind it and the craftsmanship behind it. So in that realm, that spectrum, so to speak,
Yes.
would you say that, okay, he has not fully accomplished everything since he doesn't get the approval of the experts, but at the same time, he or she got the public approval, so yeah, he or she did the work.
Of course, the ultimate is to have both. If you have public approval and you have expert approval, then I believe that you have reached something very close to objectivity. And usually, very famous, or very popular movies, when you say the best movie of all time, let's say The Godfather, public appeal and expert
I
appeal.
have a take on that.
Okay. Usually for Star Wars, okay, maybe, like, why is it very popular amongst a lot of people, a lot of people in the public, a lot of normal people, let's call them, not the expert, plus the experts, because it reached a very good balance between simplicity and sophistication. And I think this is, yeah, and it's an ideal. And this is the thing, man. If you just think of doing things for the public, you will lose that sophistication. You won't reach the level of Star Wars, you won't reach the level of Godfather. You're not going to reach the level of, I don't know, Citizens Kane or all these movies, that have public appeal, public, it's just a movie.
Citizens Kane, wow, that's
Yeah,
that's a very sophisticated approach.
but yeah. Anyways, or No Country for Old Men, a
Wow,
lot of
that's
these
a-
shows, and they have public wide appeal and they have very specific expert appeal. So this is my take on this. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a
Now-
balance. It's a balance between both. If you have, I also, of course, just a side note, a very important note actually. I'm not a elitist, and I think we should only listen to the experts, and because then the experts also get into their own little bubble and they disregard the public. And this is where I think actually beauty needs to be simple as well. By the way, like good beauty has simplicity. It's not overcomplicated, and the problem is with experts is that they usually overcomplicate things.
That's the thing. So
Yes.
now, because now it comes to art specifically,
Mhm.
artistic wise perspective, with the modern aspect, talk at design, graphic design,
Yes, yes.
logo design, whatever. Now it's all goes back to making everything simple.
Yeah.
So the sophistication part, as you mentioned, now some people might look at it, even experts would say it's a complexity layer being added.
Hmm.
So wouldn't be like easier for everyone, like let's make everything simple, let's simplify everything rather than have that rigidness,
Mhm.
rather than having that sophistication aspect. Let's make it simple
Okay.
to get closer to people, and that's it. No need for that extra layer of complexity, so to speak.
Well, there are layers of complexity. There's complexity on a visual level. There's complexity on a conceptual level. There is complexity on, I guess, I don't know how you promote the project or whatever.
Mm,
But the most important two things are the complexity on the conceptual and the visual level.
please.
Yes, and so I believe that you can simplify on the visual level and still have a very good concept that's very effective and reaches a lot of people. That's fine. And you can also like very much simplify on the conceptual level and very complicate things on the visual side, and you still would have a lot of great appeal and people would love it. And so there is no issue, I guess, in in complicating things if you pick the right area where to complicate and where to let's say compromise. So there's no issue.
But it's always up to the point. So now this is where the idea of misinterpretations between the art and the public or people who would receive that art. So, for example, movies, logos, whatever it might be, the artist, the director, whatever, he has a message, he has a thing to say, or whatever he wants to deliver. He delivers it in a certain way. The people, the watchers, takers, whatever you might call them, take it and they interpret it in a certain way. And when he hears their interpretation, it's very different from what they say. So, for example, I'm not going to mention any names. Some logos, even locally here in Saudi Arabia, when they did their rebranding, a lot of people looked at it and it was like, what does that mean?
Yes.
So, unless they have explained it themselves, what does it mean, what they have done, people would still look at it and say, okay, what does that mean?
Yeah,
What are
yeah.
you trying to say? What are you trying to tell me? What does that symbol or emblem resemble? So that's the idea where you say that layer of complexity makes it more difficult for me as a
Average person, a receiver,
receiver
yeah,
to
yeah.
understand, which makes me say, okay, what is that? I'm not gonna even bother
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
to understand what you're trying to tell me.
Look. Sometimes, sophistication can be what's the word? Pretentious, and we don't want to be pretentious. Okay, we don't want to look down. Again, this is also, by the way, looking down on people. If you think, oh, I'm gonna add this very sophisticated message that no one is gonna get in just a logo, عرفت? No, especially for a logo, that's for public use. Why would you even go into that detail? But when you're maybe telling a story, you're making an animation. Okay, you try to make people feel something. Okay, you try to make people have a certain feeling, enjoy this film, and learn something new, learn a new insight about humanity or about the world or about anything. عرفت? And in logo, you're not teaching anybody anything. It's just a logo that represents a website or represent a brand. But when it comes to storytelling, when it comes to animation, no, you need to really think deeply about what kind of insight are you trying to achieve with this movie. What conversation is this movie going to open up? What kind of يعني every good movie, when you go watch it, you leave the cinema thinking, and you talk with your friend, or you talk to them about a great movie, a very good movie, not a popcorn movie where it's like a roller coaster.
Oppenheimer.
You go inside, you watch the movie, and it's just a stream of colors and visuals that are mesmerizing you for an hour and a half, and then you're out and you're like, what did I just watch? Not this kind of movie. A movie where you leave, and like Toy Story, honestly, Pixar for me, since their until their last movie, their movies have always sparked a conversation.
Of
They
course.
always inspired you to think of something in a different way, and that's
Are you being biased because you worked at them or them?
look. At the end of the day, Pixar is the most successful 3D animation studio in the world, and that says something. Their stories are successful on a conceptual, emotional, and a level appreciated by experts, and on the public level, money-wise, they've been doing great.
I,
So.
I I'd like to know more about your journey at Pixar. So,
Hmm.
how did it start, and how was it? What did you take from it in that regard?
Okay, interestingly, Pixar was so I went to California College of the Arts in San Francisco. Went there from 2013 until 2016. I transferred from Los Angeles and I went to San Francisco to this college. This college is located. They have two campuses, one in San Francisco and one in Oakland. The one in Oakland is right next to Emeryville, where Pixar is. Okay, and so I was, alhamdulillah, a good student. And at night,
Were you?
yes, at night we had teachers come in from Pixar. So we had employees that would work at daytime in Pixar, and then they would come at night and give courses.
Okay.
So I met a few Pixar people. Brett Parker, I remember she worked on Inside Out,
Mm.
and she gave me a few classes, and she was a great teacher. And so this relationship between our college and Pixar was kept things very close between them, and opened up a possibility where Pixar offered our college training for their students.
Okay.
Yeah, and so my university, California College of the Arts, they were like, okay, we promote Mahmoud because he's a good storyboard artist, and so I went there with two other students from our college, and other colleges around California also promoted their students, and we all went into this special training program at Pixar. It was called New Voices in Animation. Yeah,
What
yeah.
was it about?
It was about storyboarding, visual storytelling, dedicated to How do you tell a story in the best, most clear possible way through drawing? And
How how comprehensive was it?
it was a 9 to 5 thing. Yeah, and we would go from not even 9, from 8 o'clock. We would go. We spend 2 hours doing live drawing. We have a model come up wearing like a scarf and doing all these different poses, and we would practice our drawing for like we draw poses in a minute or 2 minutes. Right after that 1 hour, 2 hour session, we go to a classroom. No computers, nothing digital. It was all by hand. They gave us their animation paper. It was very like well-made paper that you can see the drawing behind, and they give us a prompt. Hey, create a story about your favorite toy, okay, and give and create and end the story with an emotion about let's say anger or an emotion of jealousy. And so we would sit down and yalla, let me imagine a toy that I really like, and if I start a story, how do I end with the emotion of anger? And yalla, draw that in 20 storyboards only. You can't exceed 20 storyboards. Yalla, and we spend from 9 to 5 just sketching on this animation paper that looked like this. And then at the end of the day, we come up, we put everything on like a cardboard with pins, and we have a long critique session. Everybody critiques your work. Everybody, you have to sit down and listen to everybody tell you why your work is not good. And that
What
was amazing, Salah.
what was the criteria of the work?
Yes, the criteria, does it deliver the message? Is it communicating what you're trying to say properly without speaking or saying anything? Like this is the thing with
Oh,
storytelling.
so you
Mm.
don't even put the clouds and the bubbles.
Nothing.
So
The picture should speak for itself.
So it's just body language and facial expressions.
Yes.
Okay.
And sorry, I forgot. We also took lectures. So they would give us the lecture and then we just apply it. We draw. And so the main task, the main mission was, and this is why I'm telling you there is a standard. It needs to communicate a story without any words. If it's too confusing as an image, then there's an issue. You have an issue with your storyboards.
What's a confusing image, if I
I'll
may?
tell you, yes. So a confusing image is, so when you look at a painting, a normal painting, let's say in, I don't know, in a museum,
Yes.
usually يعني, the room for interpretation is very big. Like you can look at it, there's multiple characters there doing multiple things. So there's a big room for interpretation. However, if you want to create storyboards for a movie or an animation, you must have the message be super clear in that board, because the board is coming, or the frame or the shot is maybe just 2 seconds, 3 seconds, So there are multiple factors. Number one, lighting, space, contrast. There's also rhythm. All of these, they call them visual components. You use these visual components in a way where you have a very clear drawing. You have a very clear emotion. For example, and this is actually Aristotle spoke about this in what's the objective standard for art. The most important thing is clarity. Things can't be on the side of the screen. Like if you, okay, I want to show a happy character, I can't have him be half cut outside of the frame. He needs to be inside the frame. For example, if he's smiling, then we need to see his face properly. So he needs to be lit up properly. If I want to see, let's say someone is running, then the pose needs to feel like he's running for sure. It can't be confused as walking. This is what I mean. This is clarity. So you use all the visual components to make sure that whatever image or idea you want to communicate is properly there.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is how you do it. Yeah, and for example, also, you don't confuse the viewer with too many things happening at once in one frame. You see what I mean?
Okay.
Yeah, and these are called beats. Actually, you always have to have beats happening in succession, and every beat needs to have one clear idea or one clear drawing that, or one clear emotion or one clear
Could you
pose.
please clarify what's a beat? So is it like a pause maybe or something?
Beat is so there's a shot, and then in a shot you have beats. For example, a guy opened the door. This is one beat. A guy sat down on the chair. This is another beat. He looked to the left. That's another
like an
beat.
action?
Yes, yes, they call them beats. In animation and storyboarding, they call these beats. Usually, a storyboard doesn't have every beat. When you are trying to make a storyboard, you put something called the key pose. And so it's the key pose is, let's say this shot I just spoke to you about, a person opening a door and sitting down. What's the most important part probably of this shot is him sitting down. So that's the key storyboard image, or the key pose in the storyboard. But if you're gonna go inside of that shot and break it down into beats, then it's opening bringing his hand, opening the door, sitting down, lifting something up. These are beats.
All the poses. Okay.
Yes, yes, yes.
So now here I want to ask you about this. So now, and I would like to continue further on the journey with Pixar,
Mm-mm.
because again, I'm a Pixar fan, to be
Yeah,
honest.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. So they have, let's say, continued further when it comes to, okay, you have a pencil in your head, in your hand,
Yes,
and you
yes,
continue drawing with
yes,
your hand with a pencil.
yes,
That versus using the digital tablet.
yes.
As an artist, what's the contrast between the two? Is it the same, or just the feeling or the sensation, or do you think that with the pencil you get used to it and your hand becomes more used to it, not just from a technical perspective, even from a ideation or drawing?
For sure, ideation is one part of it, but also drawing with a pencil means that you can make mistakes, and you have to be able to deal with those mistakes. In the computer, you can just undo and you can just go back.
Yes.
But when you're drawing with a pencil, خلاص, it's permanent. You can't just undo it.
It's a pencil with
Exactly.
the eraser.
Exactly. So you have to erase, and you see it being erased. So the more you draw with your hand, the more you can avoid making mistakes. It becomes like second habit. خلاص, the moment you put your hand and you draw something, it's perfect. So the more you practice with the pencil, that's what you reach, because you can't undo. You see what I mean? But in a computer, you can just خلاص, rely on the undo, and you're always just undoing. But when you're drawing with a pencil, no, your first line needs to be great immediately.
So you're a firm believer of continuing with the classical
You
ways.
You have to at least start with that. Because it creates again, like a comfortable relationship between you and your art, where you're okay with making a mistake and then fixing it as you go along. And the more you keep doing that, the more you're gonna get used to having your own look and feel and your own style. And even when you go to digital after doing pencil for a long time, خلاص, your strokes are great immediately. You have they call it muscle memory, actually. When you are so used to drawing in a good way, you know how to draw your line, your gesture very well. خلاص, you have this muscle memory. The moment you put your hand, even if you're not thinking about it, you're drawing very well. عرفت? And this is something that, again, comes with practice. And it can't be replicated unless you do it first by hand on paper. I believe so.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So After that, did they make you at Pixar? Did you work in certain movies? If you can,
Oh no, no. They just gave us lectures and they made us look at some of the process of projects that they worked on, like Ratatouille and stuff like that. Things that they can't show to the public. They showed us a lot of secret stuff, yani, which was great.
can you share with us
Yeah,
some?
like yani, movies that they already did. They showed us all the like real papers from the projects, like color scripts that they made, experiments. That was amazing. That
So
was awesome.
for me, I would like to go. So as an animator,
Mm-mm.
I'd like to know more about the process of creating that character. So, for example,
Mm-mm.
Ratatouille is a movie that I do enjoy. Or in
Yes, me too.
Arabic, Al-Far al-Tabbakh.
Yeah, yeah.
So, was it like, so for example, especially when it comes to characterizing certain things that we as human beings have no knowledge of. So, for
Yes.
example, you talk about to me about a rat.
Mm.
Rat is for us, a disgusting creature. It's a rat. It's a disgusting creature. It has disease. It has whatever it is.
Yeah.
So now you're bringing that character, making it a hero of a movie
Mm.
in a certain way, and you are rooting for that rat, and he's creating something. So I want to know the process where the animator comes in, and okay, I'm gonna do that rat in that way, in that shape and that form, and he's gonna continue and create that sophisticated or that world that captivates you.
Yes.
Where does this lie? Where does the animator comes in and do that kind of thing?
Look, the best thing, and I think this is the thing that I really love about animation, is the limitlessness of it. Yani, it's limitless. You can imagine anything and make it come to life. So for sure, the idea was, even with Toy Story, like, hey, let's make a movie from the perspective of toys. Let's look at the world from a toy's perspective. And so even with Ratatouille, they're like, hey, let's look at the world from the point of view of a rat who really loves cooking. He lives in France. And French people are all about cooking and making food. And in France, they have a rat problem in France. In Paris, there's a lot of rats. So probably the artist just had a crazy idea. They're like, yo, let me see that rat. What if that rat was a chef? Let me make that into an idea. And this is what I love about animation. And this is why sometimes, honestly, I have my own standard when it comes to animation. If an animation can be just filmed, for me, it's not a really good one. Like if the project is something that you can just make with a camera, then for me, then you're not using the medium properly of animation. Pixar, the thing that makes them so unique, in my opinion, is that they always push the boundaries of storytelling through the medium itself of animation, what it allows for. Animation allows you to explore this, from the perspective of a rat, from the perspective of an insect, Bug's Life.
That's a very. By the way,
Cars, Yeah, exactly.
But
Yeah.
Bugs Life. Just recently, I went to watch the Arabic version again. It's amazing.
It's yeah. And also, but then also and this is a valid Salaha idea. Someone like, I think it's called Pete, his name is Pete Doctor, who made Incredibles. He believes the opposite. He believes that no, great animation is when you take something very real and you make it very interesting in a new way, because The Incredibles was about a family, and it's a regular family, but they had superpowers. You see what I mean? So, yeah, these are two different ideas. However, they still use the medium of animation very well because they turned them into superheroes, with interesting capabilities. But yeah, this is character design, I would say, is that it's just about pushing your imagination to the limits,
Okay.
a character, this water bottle, what if this was a character and walked around, and what feelings would this water bottle have, oh, I want to be always full, I don't want to be empty, you can come up with stuff, this microphone, he's always in need of someone to talk to, he's lonely, that's why he's always near to people. Yeah, you can come up with stuff like that.
Yeah, because actually I need to also mention, and shout out to Samah Kamil. She's the first episode that we had. Samah Kamil, manga artist.
Manga arts, okay.
Yes, and she's she's also won an award when it's called worldwide award for recognizing her manga. So shout out to her as well. But I want to ask, so from your perspective as an animator, do you believe that an animator is because in some cases, for example, you have a novelist who writes a novel, then the director comes in and he sees that novel and he creates a movie out of it. But the original idea is coming from that novelist. So when it comes to animation world, is the animation also like an execution realm where, okay, you have a storyteller who has written that story, that script, and an animator sees it and says, you know what, I can create an animation out of it? Or does it come like organically from within when it comes to the drawing aspect, animation aspect, and all of that?
No, you can be just a executioner, or you can be just a person who يعني works as labor in animation. You can be, and you can be a leader or a writer or a creative director or a director in general. It's both paths exists. And however, I think, especially in an industry where yeah, things are not that settled yet, where there's no like actual big animation studio with a lot of jobs, you need to be a director. Yeah, and you need to get away and move away from the executioner mindset. And if you want to have that director mindset, then you need to have a big picture image of the whole field, when from writing to storyboarding to character design to animating to even compositing, where you bring in the animation together and you give it lighting and stuff like that. So for now, especially in Saudi, you need to have big picture view of animation, and for that you need to have also good knowledge of art in general, of creativity. Where does it come from? How to be more creative? How to write creatively? How to be inspired? How to come up with ideas? And all of this comes if you. Yeah, Shub, honestly, I studied. Okay, let me tell you an interesting story.
Go ahead.
Actually, when I went to the States, I first went to a school called the Art Institute, okay, of Los Angeles, and that was in LA. And the school was a trade school. It wasn't or a business, or it was for money, for profit school. It wasn't a university. And the reason why I went to it, because it was the first thing that came up on Google. I searched on Google art school in LA because I wanted to be in LA, close to Hollywood, and then it came up, boof, right away. It was sponsored ad, so it was promoted by Google Ads, and so I was like, oh, this is a great school. I'll go there. And so I click and I go, and they immediately accept me. I didn't.
You're an impulsive, correct?
I
Are
am
you?
kind of, yeah, maybe, yeah, yeah. I guess the perks of being an artist, or curse, maybe. Anyways, so so boom, I go and because it was the first thing that came up, and they accepted me with no portfolio review, nothing. And I go there to LA, and the school was very bad. It was very technical. They were like just teaching you simple, only techniques. There was no theory. There was no art history. There was no like people who did this for years and worked as professors, or who were reading into art. It was just people that were working in the industry and working on a very specific thing, like painting backgrounds. And he was teaching a class. عرفت? Okay, I learned very good skills. However, the inspiration, the idea of being a director was lost. And they only cared about how you can go out and get a job. And so that's when I was like, I don't think this is the right place for me. Even the people there, a lot of them weren't inspired people. They were like, hey, art is probably easy. I'm just going to go here and do this. And so I moved, I transferred. I went to California College of the Arts in San Francisco. And there, that school was all about teaching the academics of art, teaching art history, art criticism, visual theory, theories around color, the history of experimental animation. And even when they were giving you a task to do, they didn't care about the execution that much. They're like, give me a good idea. Give me an idea that resembles you. If the idea resembles you, and it's very well thought through, and you spend a lot of time on it, and they critique the idea a lot, then the execution doesn't matter, as long as you deliver that idea in a very good way. And so when it came to the end of the year, you saw like 20 different projects, full ideas, full short films, and each one had a completely different style. Some of them had very sophisticated styles, very well made, very well crafted, and some were very simple, but each one did something that resembled them. And that gave us this kind of leadership mentality of being a director. And I love that. And that's, alhamdulillah, I believe, yani, that made me relatively successful when I came back to Saudi, because I had this big picture image where I care more about story and idea than I care about the minutiae of execution. However, that doesn't mean I don't care about the execution. I do, but I also care about story and idea much more.
So do you think that because this what might, correct me if I'm wrong,
Mm.
I'd like to hear your take on that.
Mm-mm.
What differentiates maybe art from physics, math, or other applied sciences where, okay, yes, you have that theories, that the theories of 100 years or 200 years ago,
Mm-mm.
and you're applying it on certain equations, and that's it. So as you mentioned, they are putting you, I'm not to say the word programming, it's again a bit harsh,
Mm-mm.
but they're putting you in the path that, okay, you're gonna be an engineer or whatever, an engineer or whatever, and these are the theories that you need to memorize, understand.
Yes.
So it's not, there is no room to create. something new or put in your or resembling yourself. So it's more rather than okay, who executes it better, who does it better, rather than who thought of it first or how did you think of that for that way of thinking. Rather than as you mentioned when it comes to art,
Hmm.
art. Okay, yes, you have the execution side. At the
Hmm.
same time, you have okay. I wouldn't say the word academics, but rather the thinking behind it.
Yes,
You
yes,
can
yes.
think behind. Okay, so I'm gonna do. So you can ask even why. Why am I doing it in that
Exactly.
perspective? Why am I doing it in that regard?
Yes.
Why am I building my character in that
Yes.
sense?
Yes, 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 yes. No, it's so important. Yani, in art is yeah, or in animation in general, knowing why you're doing something is so important. Knowing where you're getting your references, your inspiration from is so important. يعني, the history of art and animation, especially also, if you look into it and read it, it's so inspiring and there are so many styles and so many different things that you can come up with. So imagine you have a library in your head of all that knowledge and you just come up and you just mix and match these things together. But usually an executioner, خلاص, he just is ready to receive, from a person this style to do. Or maybe even if he's trying to create, he may have a very limited scope. What is, let's say, cubism? What is impressionism? Abstract expressionism? These are all names. Yeah,
Well,
yeah, in art. If you go to a museum in France, you will find all these schools of thought in art. And even when you read their books, يعني, how they explain why they came up with this. And so when you have all of that, when you make up a story or when you create an art piece or an animation, these little things, by the way, they're not little, they're very big actually. They influence how you're going to make stuff. Of course, man, knowledge is power, Like you need to, when you have knowledge of all this, it will influence your work in a very good way.
and speaking of that, I just now remembered because
Mm-mm.
I attended a talk.
Mm-mm.
One of my colleagues in the industry,
Mm-mm.
and he told me something that there is no such a thing as an inspiration.
Okay.
So it is actually what you're doing is your mind
Mm.
is, as you mentioned, retrieving something that you have seen before,
Uh-huh.
and it's mixing and matching with things that you are seeing at the moment, and voila, you have an idea.
Mm, mm.
We call it inspiration, but it's actually memory retrieving. Are you in or not in that concept?
I look again, big topic, mashallah, very big philosophical topic. I believe, no, I actually believe there is such a thing as inspiration. I believe that, when we dream, this is actually something that philosopher Carl Jung spoke about, is that there are certain archetypes that appear in all our dreams as human beings. And these archetypes are stuff that you haven't seen in real life, like they say, like a snake eating its tail, or like
Mm.
a wheel or some sorts. All these little things, they appear in our dreams, and they come from somewhere else. Okay, they're
Mm.
transcendent. So if you're talking a very deep philosophical level, I don't think, because this is a Freudian idea, when you say that everything is just whatever is inside you, whatever is inside your brain already. I don't believe that. I believe that we actually do get inspiration from somewhere else. However, which is very interesting also, because when you are in the art process, by the way, and when you're making an art piece, you are retrieving things from your past and you are going back and forth. But sometimes, as you're retrieving from the past,
Or going through Pinterest with thousands of pictures. That's
yeah, yeah, exactly. As you're going through it, sometimes you get something like a, what do you call it? Like a, not, it's not a mutation, but it's like a spark, comes up
yes.
where things blend in a new way that you've never seen before. And the thing is that I find يعني not so positive, honestly, about someone who says all art is just copying, is that they may end up just literally copying things. But you need to actually try and achieve originality. Maybe originality is you blending two things in a completely different way that never happened before. And as you proceed in the artistic process, a blend after blend after blend, suddenly something new appears, and it's something that's different than everything you've ever seen before. And so maybe that's the originality. Maybe, يعني, it's a big debate, but I do believe that inspiration exists.
Especially in the way, as you mentioned, that the inspiration, because inspiration might happen to people who are reading more,
Mm-mm.
exposing themselves more rather than
Yes.
other. So
Yes.
that's the idea. So when you expose yourself to more things,
Yes.
inspiration would happen more because when you see something, you already have a big data.
Maybe in your subconscious, or
Exactly
yeah, yeah,
in your data center, your
yeah,
mind.
yeah.
So you can already like, oh, I've seen that before. So okay, voila, I have something new. So I just came up. I just had that question.
Mm-mm.
since now you are now, this is more of a fatherly question.
Okay, okay.
Okay. Now, someone might come to you, for
Mm,
example, your friend, a father as well,
mm,
and he comes to you and asks you, now I want to know if my son is an artist or he could be a good painter or an animator.
mm, mm.
What certain characteristic would you say that, okay, because again, it's not like like in the old days, it's either a doctor or an engineer. No, it's
Yeah,
now
yeah,
it's more than that.
yeah.
But how would you spot it from that early age, or even, let's say, I wouldn't say the word influence,
Mm.
but put him in an environment where he can have that artistic mindset.
Well, I think if he's inspired, and if he's a person who's constantly thinking of new ideas, if he's creative, if he has a burning desire to create, to make stuff, not just consume stuff,
At
then
a,
this is an artist.
at a very young age.
Yes, yes, there are. Yani, when I was young, I was making little plays in my house. Like I would bring a little like a mattress, and I would go behind it and I would make with my hands little stories with my brothers and sister. And yeah, so if you have that urge to create, maybe making noises, maybe like trying to act like a certain character in a movie or a show. If you suddenly come up with an idea about a situation, let's act this out. These are all little sparks of creativity. Someone wants to make something. And I think everybody has that, by the way. I don't think some people don't have that. I think we all have that, but we kind of disregard it as we grow older. We kind of put it aside. But I think all of us as children always have this big imagination. We want to create things that don't exist, things that excite us, that, the kind of, because the world is, when you're young, the world is so not
Vast.
inspiring and yeah, vast. It's also new, it's novel, it's like shocking, it's like, whoa, what is this, how did this happen, look at this frog, look at this, that, and so this kind of wonder, it makes you want to make more wondrous things. And I think that is something that you kind of cultivate, not necessarily a child, by the way. Like even a scientist is creative, by the way, coming up with theories, coming up with ideas about certain things. Even, by the way, people who come up with strategies in, like, even in the marketing world and the creative world, or these people are creative. Yani they nurture that sense of coming up with new things, not just copying, repeating. You try to synthesize. Okay, let me look at this thing. Let me look at this problem solving. This is all very creative.
Some
Yani.
people might disagree.
Well, look, man, yani, it's very disappointing that we don't think of ourselves as creatives, even in those non-creative fields, in parentheses. Yani, being creative means you're always trying to think of a new way of doing things, and a new way of doing things doesn't mean you come up with a new theory, a new novel theory. No, it's just, hey, let me, yani, instead of making this strategy, let me blend these two strategies together and see if I can come up with something new. Yani, even in your day-to-day life, like, why do I need to go to this location in this way only? Why not go this here first, sit down here? Why do we always try to live life in this automated way? Like, being creative is actually escaping being living on an automation, on autopilot. And
Okay.
that's, I guess, on a deeper level. Yeah.
But do you believe, since you just brought that up,
Mm.
do you believe, because in some cases people
Mm-mm.
would say creative people need to have a certain characteristic
Mm-mm.
that you can label them as a creative. Like, for
Mm.
example, I'm against that. So, for
Mm-mm.
example, someone might come in wearing a thobe, and a very normal person with his way, his look, his hair, and everything, and he could be very creative.
Yes.
While some people would define creativity like, look at, he has different socks color. He works.
Yeah.
He's talking a certain way, and he wears different color pants
Shoes,
shoes.
or different color socks. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, because this I need to
Yeah, that's a stereotype.
just a stereotype. I believe, I'm not quite sure. I cannot, let's say, give credit unless I know for sure. But I believe one of the creative directors in the industry here in Saudi Arabia has said that before. But again, I'm not sure if he's the one who said it, so I'm not gonna mention his name. Is that anyone who claims to be creative is not actually creative. Creativity should be approved, or let's say, assist by people from out from your realm, your society,
Yeah.
people who are around you. So people who are around you are saying you're creative. That means okay, you're creative.
Yeah, yeah.
Rather than here, look, look here. I'm creative. I'm creative. So
Yeah, there is, of course, yani social approval. Some people think it's trendy, maybe, to look creative, to look weird, trying to be outside the norm,
like a
trying,
nerd.
yeah, exactly, trying to rebel against what's out there. But yeah, creativity is not about how you look. No, for sure. Yani, creativity is what I just say. It's about being spontaneous, finding new ways of dealing with things, trying to create. You're always trying to create. That creativity is creation. You're trying to always create something. But if you're just consuming, if you're just receiving, you're just imitating, and you're not even trying, then yeah, you're not creative.
Okay. Now I want to ask you here as a creative slash animator, as slash director as well.
Mm-hmm.
So we know now the hard skills,
Mm.
the technical skills. I'll talk about lighting,
Yeah.
character development, whatever.
Yes.
Other let's say skills that
Yeah.
people might get to know more. So when they want to know more about animation, but I'd like you to tell me more about the soft skills.
Okay.
So we talk about emotional intelligence, team building, whatever it is. So what kind of soft skills do you believe a creative person
Oh yeah.
slash animator should? I wouldn't say the word master,
Yes.
but at least have a sense of
Yes. Yes. Yes.
in order for his status from here to here.
Yes,
That-
okay. Yeah, well, there is a problem actually with a lot of artists, and this is normal. Since if you're creative, let's say if you're spontaneous, you might have your own way of doing things, and so when you have your own way of doing things, it might be hard for you to work with other people, and that's not good. I strongly believe that every artist should be involved with other artists. You need to be involved in a community of artists. You need to know how to work with other people. You need to know how to be يعني how to create a team, especially in animation. يعني maybe if you're a painter and you're doing paintings for galleries, maybe you don't need to work with a team. But if you're working in animation specifically, you need to really know how to work within a team. You need to know how to find the right people to work with all the time. You need to be able to appreciate their work. You need to be able to tell them this is a good piece of work that you did or not, but in a very respectful, very objective way. Because a lot of artists also, you need to know how to receive criticism in a very good way, and that's a huge issue with most artists. Again, you get attached to your work, and that's normal. Like, you work on something, you create it yourself, you love it. And actually, this is one of the things that they taught us at college, is never fall in love with your own work. And that was very يعني, that was a killer thing they told us صراحة, because I loved my work. And so they told us, listen, you have to learn to detach from your work, always detach from it and open it up for critique. However, learn how to defend it, learn how to speak the language of your craft very well, to defend why you did something in this way based on objective standards. And if they win in that argument, they win. If the critique came up to you, and wallah, I remember, we would go in a classroom and we would put up our work in front of 20 students. And it was mandatory that each and every single one stands up and says something, anything. Just say something. Based off what you learned so far in this class, what do you think of this piece? Does it cover this properly? Does it cover this properly? This properly? So you learn the hard way at art school to accept criticism, and this is so important. Probably, man, actually the most important thing for an artist to know, an animator, is to know how to accept and deal with criticism. Yes.
Okay, now with that, I want to go a bit deeper when it comes to accepting criticism.
Go
Now,
deeper.
because we were speaking about an artist
Hmm.
criticizing another artist.
Hmm.
So we talk about peers criticizing each other. But let's go when it comes to an artist receiving criticism from non-artists. So this is the point where, okay, miscommunication happens.
Yes, yes, yeah.
So how should an artist deal with that?
Yeah, look, some people are very actually radical about this point, and they would say that you should only listen to criticism from another artist who's a peer. However, I think most people who don't know any of the principles of art or animation or whatever, who can't give a valid, interesting critique, they feel the problem. They feel the issue. Like, they would watch a thing and they feel like something is off about this. And I think that this feeling should be listened to. Like, if you make an animation or a little short and you think it's funny, and you play it and nobody laughs, there's an issue. عارف?
Mhm.
Even if they're not artists or who know a good joke and whatever, if nobody's laughing, there's an issue with what you did. If you make a piece and you're trying to make people get affected and feel emotional, not even one person had a tear, there's an issue. عرفت? So no, public response maybe is more of a feeling response because they don't understand why they like it, but they like it, you know? And they tell you, man, this is amazing. I can tell them why they think it's amazing. However, they can't. So it's not criticism, more of a feeling. Like I would want to know, what did this make you feel? I would ask the audience, how do you feel about this? Is it confusing you? Is it making you happy? Is it giving you a bad feeling? You want to cry? Is it sad? And so this is what I would say. Yani. So I would say, if they know the lingo of art criticism, listen to it. If they don't know it, listen to their feelings.
Now, you just said something about feelings, and
Yes.
this time I can credit it to the right person. I'm gonna go back to what now he's currently the CEO of Habbar, Hassan Ansari,
Yes, I
said
know.
before.
Yes.
I never met the guy personally, but
I respect him so much.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember, like, maybe a while ago, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, I listened to him saying something about critiques
Yes.
and how he classified them into 3 different categories of critique.
Interesting.
So you have the good critique, the bad critique, and something else. So, for example, when it comes, I don't remember exactly, but
Yes.
the
yes.
meaning is,
Yes.
you have that critique where he gives you why. For example, you tell me it's supposed to be emotional and it didn't make me feel emotional at all.
Yes.
I would tell you it didn't make me feel emotional because the animation style did not was not emotional. So I'm giving you
Yes. Yes. A reason.
a reason. Why
Yes.
is it? The other critique would be, I didn't feel emotional at all. At all.
Why? I don't know.
I don't exactly.
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know why.
Yeah.
So that's where it gets to that point. Okay, I don't know. So when you reach that point, so it's like you're reaching a dead
Yes.
dead
Yes.
end. What are you? Even if you have a valid point
Yes.
as a
Yes.
critique, yes, you don't like it.
Yes.
You didn't feel emotional. You didn't find it funny.
Yes.
Okay, give me a reason why.
Yes. Yes.
So that's sometimes I believe some artists would and I understand that completely.
Yes. Yes.
They would find that I wouldn't say the word desperation, but they would feel desperate when they face that kind of critiques. Is that
Yes. Yes.
with their work, with their business, whatever it is, where the person tells
Sometimes it feels degrading. You know, it feels
exactly
Yeah.
in a way that I don't like it. Why? No reason, or I don't know, or I don't know how I can communicate it. So
Yes.
it's put him in a way, okay, that even if I want to improve, I don't even know where to start. So how do you deal with that kind of issue?
Yeah, again, that's like more of, like you said, that's the public kind of criticism that comes from the audience, not from the experts. If an expert is not giving me a reason, yeah, I'll be really pissed. If the audience is not giving me a reason, I can't blame them. Fam. They don't know, they don't understand the lingo. They understand. However, you wish, يعني you hope that audiences would be more considering, I guess, or considerate. But that's the way it is. خلاص. يعني if they don't like it, they're gonna say it, and you can't control that. They don't know why they don't like it. Some people, sometimes it comes from ego, or it comes from a place of malice, or you don't like the person. Maybe I don't like you as an artist, and I'm like, I just don't like what you did, fine. But you haven't actually, if you don't know that I did this project, maybe you would like it. عرفت? So there's a lot of things that happen there. Maybe you were in a bad mood. You watched it and you were pissed off and you were just hated it, like shouted at someone, and then you watched it and you're really pissed. Or he looks like someone you know. You know, the character looks like someone you know, and you hate that person, so you're not appreciating the project at all. All of these things, an artist learns how to put away to look at the objective thing in itself, but the audience is hard. So I can't blame them. I wish they were more considerate, but that's how the world is.
And to me, I want to ask you that question because we've been in that field one way or the other.
Yes.
Is that you are an animator at an agency, the marketing side,
Yes.
and you deal with a lot of clients.
Yes.
I'm not mentioning names or whatever, but what do you do in that kind of perspective? So a lot of people, when they say, okay, that you've done that work, you received, so for example, you received the brief or received the request
Yes.
of doing that kind of animation, and you do it in a certain way, and the feedback that you get, okay, make it better or make it more creative. And it's and you don't know, okay, what do you mean by more creative? We don't know, but you figure it out. So when you reach that point, is that okay? You receive that feedback, and it's mandatory for you to do it,
Mm.
and you figure it out yourself. So, what's your process of thinking as a creative slash animator?
Okay, so this is very interesting because when it comes to clients, I really firmly believe that a good creative or a good animator, whoever, if I'm getting a brief, I need to really know how to communicate with this client who probably doesn't know the field or probably doesn't know what kind of creativity he actually needs. So again, this is why it's really important to know the language very well of art. You sit down with the person and you ask him, you talk with him, what do you need from this? What feeling are you trying to achieve? What is something you like that looks like this? Or sorry, what is something that you want this to look like? Like if you watched, is there a show that you watched or an ad that you watched that you really liked? And he's like, oh yeah, I like this ad by Jahiz or by this. And so you're like, oh, okay, I get where you're coming from, what you like, what kind of animation you like, what kind of ad or idea you like. So a good artist or a good even creative director or animation director needs to know how to communicate very well with their client. And then honestly be open to feedback even with the client, and don't go the extra mile of finishing the job before they give you approval. A lot of artists, honestly, and I'm talking about I'm kind of harsh on artists. خلاص, the client comes in, he gives him a brief, he's like, all right, he takes the brief, he finishes the project and he gives it to the client. Of course the client is like, no, this is not what I wanted. So no, take him step by step, write the script first, show it to him. What do you think? Are you feeling it? Not there? Okay, let's talk about it. Let's debate it شوية, a little bit, bit by bit, and then you move to storyboards. You did the storyboards. Client likes the storyboards. He doesn't like them. Keep fixing them a little bit. خلاص, client, this is great. Okay, show him a reference for your style. Is this style great? You do multiple styles, you do multiple explorations. Are these all amazing? If he likes all of them, you go to the next step. This is the best way to go about. If you're working with someone who doesn't know anything and he wants something, you take him step by step, you teach him the process, and you keep the dialogue open.
Now, here's going back to the point that you just said before, that you want to raise the standards to all the public.
Yes.
Now, and this is more of, I'm talking here about the region, more
Yes.
specifically Saudi Arabia, that there is a wave of people saying, I'm not saying that I represent or not represent, I can represent anyone in that regard, that it's more of having that references, having that less knowledge aspect creates the copying element. So, for example, you go to press, okay, what did you like? Well, I like this ad, or I like this movie, or I like this style. So the artist tried to imitate,
They copy it.
or copy it,
Yeah,
one or the
yeah.
other, but with just a little bit of tweaks,
Yeah, yeah.
so that it shows off as a different style, but it's quite similar in that regard. So it creates that aspect of copying. So that's why you have a lot of works that are quite similar
Yeah, yeah,
to each
yeah.
other.
Yeah, yeah.
So wouldn't you say that this idea of
Listening to the client.
listening to the, not gonna say the word listening, okay, again, because it's his money.
Yeah,
it's
yeah, for
his or
sure. Yeah,
her
yeah.
money. But the idea of having this makes it less creative and more, okay, let's just do it this way and that's
do what he wants based on this reference. This is very interesting because actually, what you need to do as an artist is, as you go through this process, you influence the requester. You show him other things, maybe. You show him another reference for another style that you think is much better. You add to it. Maybe he gives you the style when you draw those storyboards or when you come up with that mood board to show him. You add a few more things, that could interest him, and this is how you add. A lot of artists, a lot of people in the industry, خلاص, they just want to execute what he said, خلاص, he said this reference, I'm gonna copy it exactly.
So,
Yeah.
they want to hassle. So again, I don't.
You need to add your touch a little bit and talk with him about it. Dialogue, open dialogue, bit by bit.
In the sense, at the same time, some people would say, I don't want to get into that hustle. I just want to get things done.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
I agree, man. And again, this is where the difference is. Any good animation director, or even movie director, or even commercial director here in Saudi, the thing that differentiates them is when they want to add their own little part. When they want to add their own expertise into the piece, their own touch, their own identity. The more you do that bit by bit, the more you're gonna stand out. You don't want to stand out. You just want to execute and make that bag, get that money. Do it, yeah. It's up to you, Bob. That's your own prerogative, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, of course, we cannot talk about art
Mm-mm.
without the shift that's happening in the world. I believe we're gonna get to that topic regardless.
Ugh, the
Oh,
menace.
the menace.
The
Okay,
menace.
so the final boss.
The final boss
The final
approaching
boss.
us.
Exactly. Artificial intelligence, of course.
Monster.
The monster. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, there are a lot of takes
Yes.
about
Yeah.
AI. So again, there are two ways, or people look at it in different perspectives. So when it comes to art perspective,
Hmm.
or in general, when it comes to art, creativity, it creates efficiency
Yes.
one way or the other. At the same time, people would say it lacks that human touch.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly, the human touch, the
And
sensation.
people speak of it now in this way, like
Eh,
human touch.
the humanization, the
Yeah,
human-centric approach. Now,
yeah,
with that,
yeah.
with that
Yes, yes, yes. I get you.
perspective.
Yes.
Now, I'd like to hear your take on that, and where do you foresee it going?
Okay, well, look, so far, artificial intelligence is only creating an average. Okay. Anything that comes up from an image generation model where you write, make me this piece of art or a person walking on a road or whatever, it goes through the whole internet or its database and it references from it an average look. If you ever ask an AI to make a painting, the best painting ever about a certain topic, it's going to make the most average cliche thing ever. Where artists play, and this is something a friend of mine, Abdelaziz Hoyani, says, and it's very insightful. Human beings play in the unknown. The place where we meddle, where we create, is a place between what we know and what we don't know. This area is where we create something new. And actually, me working and trying AI to implement it in my work process sometimes, I find it very difficult to create something original, and I keep prompting and prompting and prompting, and I don't reach it. Maybe it's gonna improve. We don't
So
know.
you're not a believer?
I use it as a tool, as a supporter. It supports me in maybe ideation when I'm creating a proposal. However, I believe that AI is something that could kill the process of making animation if you rely on it as an agent, as a person. No, for me. And by the way, AI has been there in the art process for a long
Yes.
time.
Yes.
Yeah, like you can use when you're I say a lasso tool, or you're trying to pick an object. The way it interpolates where the object is, that's all AI. So as a tool, it exists already. Even in animation, by the way, when you color a cell, sometimes you just click and it colors the whole thing. It knows where the edges are. And even if there's an opening, it closes that opening. This is all AI, or like previous versions of artificial intelligence. However, using AI to just, hey, create a character for me, and you don't even spend some time in ideating and going back and forth, I think that kills the process. It closes the door of opportunities that you may have never found. And yeah, and this is my personal take on AI, honestly, is that it's a great tool, but use it as a tool. Don't use it as something that replaces your mind, replaces your creativity. Because you're gonna, yani, it's a shame, man. Like, yani, a lot of people in today's industry haven't even learned all these skills yet, and now they're just going to use artificial intelligence to bypass all of that. I guess maybe that's going to have its own market, and maybe people who are human are keeping the human element. Will be like, when there's a handmade car or a handmade jewel or whatever. Maybe we're going to be the people doing the handmade ultra luxury stuff. I don't know, but for me so far, it's been misleading using artificial intelligence in the art world. Yeah. And in my art process, it takes me on a path that looks so average. And then if I just did it myself, then I would have had something original in less time. So that's my take.
Because on that aspect, because once, like for example, Midjourney and other apps
Yes.
were introduced, or other applications or programs were introduced, it was a huge shift.
Yes.
Where a lot of studios, it became mandatory. It became their focus was on learning more about that.
Yes, yes.
Because it is the future, whether we like it or not. It will have the idea, and at the same time, they would say that, okay, it's like cars. So when we had saddles with the horses, and now we had the first version of a car. Again, but again, you'll still have the steering wheel, but the cars. So it's like you're at the end of the day you're gonna ride a Ferrari or Lamborghini, a very high quality, but
Yeah.
it's you who is controlling its speed,
Yeah,
its
it's
its
like
acceleration.
before we used to use manual, now it's all automatic gear, like there are certain things that you have to overcome. I understand that argument. And also, by the way, I understand artificial intelligence in a lot of other fields. Like, for example, advertising, doing KVs or key visuals and creating these, instead of going and photographing a product, if you can just take one image and create 7 different angles. Yeah, that's great. It's for commercial purposes. It's very generic.
And efficient and efficient.
And it's very efficient for sure, 100%. However, I still believe you need to be able to know what looks good and what doesn't. A lot of art people that are using AI, they just rely on it, but sometimes it could look bad or there's a little mistake here or there. If you have the eye, the proper training to know what looks good and what doesn't, then you can use AI way better than anyone else. If you have actual director training, when you use AI, you go nuts, you go crazy because you know why it looks good. You see,
Exactly.
you know where it and you know how to improve it, or maybe you take that image and you manipulate it shoya in Photoshop a little bit in Photoshop and then put it back in. So when you have those skills, it's a way bigger advantage. But I was talking like on a more meta level thing before when I was saying if you want to create something original, like an original character, it's way harder with AI. It can give you, again, iterations. Maybe you draw something, you iterate, it gives you different outfits, but then these are always going to be average. If you want to make something totally unique, never seen before, you have to step in.
Because again, when it comes to AI, I've seen some workshops were conducted here in the kingdom by some AI prompts engineer or artists, senior graphic designers or art directors who have shifted to AI and they've seen what it can do. And to be honest, when I've seen some of the outputs of these workshops,
Yeah.
I was like, wow. Like it is like you can tell me it's a very, very high production company or a film industry company that has done these shots.
Yes.
It's all through AI. So it did create that ability
Yes.
for
Yes.
for an artist or creative director or an art director
Yes.
for him or for her or him to reach a certain level
Yes.
with much less cost
Yes.
or much less efficient in that regard.
Yeah, and again, it depends from field to field, to be honest. Yani, again, in commercials, you want something quick. Maybe it's a short little 10-second, 20-second clip where you're just showing a product, and maybe it's good. But in animation, yani, the most beautiful thing about animation is novelty. Like, it's the fact that every frame and every shot is a new thing, from scratch, done from scratch. And you knowing that it's done by a person's hand gives it way more value. Maybe I'm idealistic. I don't know. maybe I have that يعني old soul in me that wants to know that a person worked on this. Maybe I want to know this artist. Maybe I want to send him a message. Maybe I want to get to know him, get to know how he did this. Maybe I want to learn. Maybe I want to see him in his element. I think these are the things that inspire me about doing what I do. But when I know that you just wrote this as a prompt, I don't know. It's depressing.
So because I believe you've done that
Yes.
since you were young.
Yeah.
So you do appreciate the idea of okay, you have the hand and you had your mind and you
Yes.
started drawing rather than
Yes.
okay on a keyboard. So I understand your perspective, but I believe maybe after
Yeah, just
te-
a
te-
prompt engineer is now an artist.
so maybe
Yeah.
after 10 years you
Yeah.
might see a person who is a graphic designer
Yeah.
and he hasn't done any actual designing. It's all through
Ever.
it.
Yes. Yes.
Do you foresee that happening?
Yeah, it could happen. Yani, I would say that it's a bummer that he didn't experiment and do it again. See that we talked about Pixar and how even though they use 3D modeling and animation on computers, when they were trying to teach the next generation of artists, they're like, no, do it on paper, learn from your mistakes, force your hand, force your brain to get in the nitty gritty and go through the pain of going through mistakes and trying to make them better, trying to make them look more pretty. The thing is with AI, it takes out the pain. There's a pain in making something look beautiful, is of trying again and again and perfecting your craft. And so if you just prompt it. I don't know. Are we gonna even want to improve it? You know, maybe eventually we're just gonna be okay with the mediocre that it gives out. You know, خلاص يلا. I just wrote this prompt. It gave me the first result. خلاص, this is great. 5 minutes. Why do I even try to improve it? And eventually, no one wants to improve anything, and we may end up in like I was always like when I first saw the beginning of AI art, I was like, does this mean everybody's gonna become an artist? Are we all gonna become creative? Are we all gonna? Is the standard of beauty gonna increase or is it gonna decrease? That's an open question. And sometimes I feel like I think it's gonna decrease. To be honest, yeah,
Okay.
I think, and this is what I'm seeing on Twitter. The art and ads are becoming more and more cliche. You know, more and more you know, like are they going to improve? ما أعرف. Is AI suddenly going to have super intelligence and it's going to be conscious and it's like, hey, I don't like this. This is giving me a icky feeling. I want to improve it and it's going to improve on its own work. I don't know.
It's possible, and again, as you said, it's an open discussion, and we believe I had it with a couple of people before, where the idea that yes, now, and we had an AI expert as well in one of our podcast episodes, where yes, AI always will look for your approval. So whatever you tell him he's gonna do, he's gonna do it, even if it doesn't make sense. He was gonna do it.
Yes, yes.
Unless you
and hallucinate to make it make sense.
Exactly.
He's gonna bring things that don't relate to each other just to answer the question.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It might
LLMs, large language models.
Exactly.
That's the problem. Yes.
But it might reach a point where the AI would have his own conscience, and he would actually stop you at a certain perspective, and he would.
Hey, I'm done working for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now I'm gonna ask you a series of questions, and it's about you and your work.
حلو.
And you can not necessarily give an example, but give like a background aspect of it. So the first one is, have you ever fallen out of love with one of your works?
Yes, I have actually. I've worked on a project. I'm not gonna say for whom, but I spent a lot of time writing the script and doing the storyboards, and I tried to be faithful to the requester multiple times, and he liked multiple iterations of those storyboards. But then at some point, and after approving most of it, he just went back to a very old idea that he simplified, and he's like, "Khalas, this is what I want." And I had to do it, and I had to work on it. And so I worked on it, and it was a long project. It took me 3 months, and I did not like the project at all. Yeah, it did happen. I was in love with it. I really loved it in the beginning, but the fact that I was forced to make something so dumbed down eventually was not something I liked.
Do you that's a good intake. Do you believe in the quality of work or the reputation of the companies that you work with? So for example, someone might come up and say, okay, I've done mediocre work, but I've worked with so and so and so XYZ, and they are big names, but the work quality is mediocre. While another person come with their portfolio and they worked amazing projects, but the names they've worked with are not very well known as an artist. Or the market. I wouldn't say the art, the market.
Yeah.
They would lean more to the first one, right?
The person who's done a lot of things that are with other people that are well known. I don't think it matters, honestly. But look, actually, in the market, it may matter because if he's working with big clients, that means he knows how to handle them. You know, even if the work is mediocre, then he probably has all the managerial and soft skills to handle such big clients. So they're like, okay, this guy is reliable. However, if a guy is a very good artist with amazing work, but he never worked with big clients that are like tough to work with, then he might be a liability. You know, he might be hard to trust. Even though he might create the best piece of work for you ever, but if he can't handle criticism, feedback, teamwork, then he might be a liability. Yeah, you're right.
But that's the thing. So how do you maintain this? Because again, you might face an artist who has an extraordinary set of skills, but again, he might have these kind of issues, whether it's team building or working with a team, handling criticism, listening skills, whatever it might be.
Yes, or even time management.
Time management, whatever it might be.
Yes.
So, as a director and a team leader
Yes.
of creative people, what's your take on handling these kind of things or these kind of issues?
Look, uh, I know how to handle artists. I think so. In the animation field, because I am one, and I feel for them. I feel that it is hard for someone to come up and tell you redo this. Because again, remember I told you about the pain. You go through pain when you're doing a drawing or you're animating and you're trying to work those keyframes in the right way to get the right balance and harmony and rhythm. And so I get that. And so honestly, a good director needs to empathize very well with his team, and but at the same time knows how to push them, how to tell them, do this because you want to do something that represents you, because these are the little things that matter with an artist, that what he's doing is something that will reflect on him, that will go on his portfolio. You need to show him the fruits of his labor. Like for example, if I worked on a project and there was a painter and I published the project, I mention him, like, hey, this guy did the paintings, this guy did this. Or I thank him when I go on stage or whatever. If I'm going to speak about it somewhere, or if I go and give a workshop, I'm going to say, put his name. This guy did this animation here and it was great and he did very well. And so you need to be tough on them, but you need to also tell them that you're going to be appreciated.
And they're sensitive.
Yes, that's why. Yeah. So you need to, yeah, exactly. So you need to tell them that you're going to be appreciated. And you need to show them fruits of what they did. If people responded on Twitter or on Instagram and said, "Oh, great work," show them the comments. Tell them like, look at people what people are saying. For example, if you designed a toy, okay, and the designer designed it for you, khalas, he did a really great job. And maybe it started selling, show him that it's in the store now. Take a picture of it. Hey, look, the toy that you designed is now on the shelf.
On the shelf, yes.
They appreciate that so much. I appreciate it, so I understand that. I also understand that an artist, again, look, the most thing I don't understand and I don't like is unprofessionality and not being on time. That for me is something I can't. If I'm not a man of your word, and you tell me you're going to finish something and you don't do it on time, that for me is hard, and I think that needs to be fixed in most creative people. But of everything else, I can work with. Yani. I can kind of go back and forth and discuss, but not. But you telling me you're going to finish it and you don't, and you keep repeating it, and you don't stand up for that, or you lie and you say you're almost done, or you say, okay, it'll be done in a few minutes, and you don't, and you never even started. Not having integrity. If you don't have integrity, that's
Okay,
big problem. You have to be authentic. You have to love what you're doing. You have to do it on time and try to do it on time.
so it's about communicating with artists, about showing appreciation. That's the most important
For
key.
sure. Yes. Maybe. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Second question is, so I'm not gonna say the word falling out of love. Have you ever worked on something that after when you see it and it's like, what have I worked on?
In a negative way, يعني?
Let's say both.
Okay.
I don't. Let's look at both angles.
Look, and the positive is when you make something so crazy you don't expect it. I did this ad for Zabidi Eye Clinic. It was one of the first projects I ever made when I came back from the States.
What year?
2018.
In Jeddah?
In Jeddah, yes. When I first came back from it's on YouTube. It's on my YouTube.
So, but I mean the ad
It's a commercial. Yeah.
I mean the clinic, is it for
eye clinic?
For eye clinic.
Yes, it was an eye clinic. Yeah.
Okay.
And so I basically created an eye character that walks and goes to the clinic to get treated. And it's taken up by a hand like this, and they put him in a bathtub. It's like a spa. So he goes through a spa treatment. And when I finished that, now when I look back, I'm like, how did I make what? How did he even accept this idea? And the client was so happy back then. Have I ever worked on something where I was like, how on earth did I do this? Maybe some of the motion graphics that I've done before at agencies where I had to do it in one day, maybe, but I always try to keep the minimum amount of quality in my work. Like, for example, maybe I don't animate every frame, but I make sure that the frames look good in terms of composition. Maybe I don't add the best music, but I try to add sound effects, or the other way around, So I always try to keep the minimum amount of quality. And so I don't have something that I'm totally disappointed in, but maybe some of the quick things that I did as motion graphics back in the day, maybe 4 years ago, some I don't really appreciate.
Yeah, the other way around. Is there something that you've seen and it was like, wow, how did I do that? But yet it was something very you're even impressed by your own work to a point where you were mesmerized or captivated.
Yeah, like I said, the Zabidi one was one
Yeah,
of them.
yeah.
The oh yeah, Red Sea Film Festival 2021 intro. I love that project so much. The process itself of making it was so, يعني, the connection between the team was amazing. It was the first time I took time from anything else and I just focused on one project for 3 months. And so when I look back at that project, I always say, how did I get in such a mood to create something this pretty? Which, alhamdulillah, I had a great response. Maybe it's not the best thing I've ever done, but the fact that it was shown in the first Red Sea Film Festival ever, 2021. There was Red Sea Film Festival 2020, but that was the first live event where people went there. And so I'm very proud of that project. I really love that project. And I always look back and say, how did I handle it on my own? Because I was the director and I was the project manager and I was the producer who brought everybody on the project together. I was animating some of the shots. I was painting some of the backgrounds. I look back and I see the backgrounds because it was all about Al Balad, a girl in Al Balad filming a bird, a magical bird. I worked with Faris Gudus and Suhaib Gudus on it,
Yes.
on the idea back then, and there was such chemistry as we
Shout out
worked
to
on
the
it.
Goodest brothers.
Yes, there was such great chemistry working on it. Um, Especially the story, it was in one way, and then I was really pissed at the story, and I was really mad that it didn't touch quite well, and so I went back and I spent like a whole night working on it. But yeah, that project is I really love that project. When I every time I look back at it, it moves me صراحة. Yeah.
Do you think one of your three kids might become an animator in the future?
Shout out to my daughter Noor, my kid Abdul Malik, and Ibrahim.
Oh,
I think Noor has potential. Saraha, my eldest daughter, she really loves to draw, and she actually made some animations with Procreate Dreams on an iPad. Yeah, she made one actually 2 years ago. She did it and she recorded the audio and mashallah, yani. So no, they like it because they always see me at the house working on my tablet, and so they're inspired to make. And one of the things that's funny about يعني I don't want to talk about myself too much like that, but one of the things that people always say about me is that I'm always making sound effects as I talk, and so my kids see me doing that. I'm being goofy most of the time. Maybe I'm not that goofy today, but usually I'm very goofy and animated, so that inspires them to act as well. And so I think Noor, maybe Ibrahim and Abdul Malik, they're still young. Noor is 7 and Abdul Malik is 5 and Ibrahim is 3, and so they're still young. So Allahu A'lam, we'll see. Yani.
okay. What about your families or your father or your mother when they was there a reaction from them where they said, "Wow, we didn't expect that from you," and you said, "Wow, wow, wow, that's something."
Yeah, I was actually a shout out to, of course, to my mom and dad. يعني صراحة, they've been so supportive, since I was a very young kid. My dad would always bring me papers. He would make sure for me to always have paper to draw on. He supported me with all the material to draw with. He always traveled, and so when he would travel, he would bring me books to learn how to draw, and he gave me those. He pushed me to like, hey, like if he saw me working on a video, he would always tell me, even when I was 10 years old, he would be like, did you finish it? Did you finish it? So I'd always remember to finish it. When there was like a competition to make an animation, he would tell me, if you do it, you'll get a PlayStation game.
Mm.
So I would go and I try to do it. So he was always in the back, يعني Jazakallah khair, always pushing me to make it. And even though I was good at school, I wasn't bad at school. He didn't insist on me becoming an engineer. My dad is an engineer. He didn't insist on that. He knew that I was, even my mother, Sarah, they all knew that I had something different, that I loved doing this, and that this is something that could be a leader in, a pioneer in, because it just came to me naturally, and I always loved doing it. I was never pissed off. It gave me so much happiness, and so even in school, I went to Dar al Fikr for Jeddah. Shout out to Dar al Fikr, and they always asked us to create a project for every class. And this is something very interesting about Dar al Fikr Salaha. And so everybody would always make maybe a research paper or create a big board. I always made an animation. I always made for chemistry, for history, for language. I always made a little clip, and I would deliver that to the school, and they always loved it. They're like, "Great, you just summarized the topic," and so I always incorporated my animation into my studies, into my everything. And I graduated with a very good grade, alhamdulillah, in almost 97 or 98. But my art was my main focus and goal, and my parents never said no. They always loved it. They always laughed when I made something, and they're like, "Go ahead, go and study it." However, another thing that my dad insisted on me doing is make money out of it, and this
Of
is
course.
something, yeah,
You
and
speak a living out of it.
exactly, and honestly, he made me do that since I was in school. Like I did an internship at DDB. They're an agency, very well known
Yeah.
actually. My cousin worked there, and so he got me a chance to go there and to do like a little. I was 17 maybe or 16, so I sat down and I watched graphic designers work. Even in Jeddah, I went to Destination Jeddah. It's a known magazine in Jeddah.
And you were like, I want to do this. I
Yeah,
want to do
exactly.
this.
And I would go and I just sit down in the office and see how they work. And so, and sometimes I would do little commissions, very simple commissions. Actually, my first ever paid job, I did caricatures for Al Bilad newspaper when I was in high school. So I was always working. I was always trying to make money. My dad's friends would come up and tell me, "Hey, make us a logo," and I would make them a logo at high school. Yeah, thank God. يعني الحمد لله. I always looked at my skills and my talent or this hobby as a way to make money, not just as something
Uh,
that I did on my spare
so
time.
so in that perspective, you would believe this. So this is the thing. So what made you to where you are is that push from your parents. If we go back, so your dad, your mother, your father did not force you into any certain path. You
No.
created your own path. You paved that path as a perspective. So and that I believe you have acquired that mentality that you would do the same for your kids. So, for example, if one of them said, "Okay, I don't want to, I hate animation," you
That's fine. Of course, of course. But look, يعني I would of course encourage, and this is something my parents encouraged in me, is knowledge and being a learned person. And my grandfather, God bless his soul, he was a professor of language in Al Qura in Mecca, and so we have kind of and my dad currently is a professor in the U.S. actually, teaching
mashallah.
system dynamics. So we have this kind of uh, intellectualism in our family شوية, and so we always care about knowledge and learning and reading books. My dad always used to tell me read. I used to never read, but I eventually started reading. So I would support that. Have a lot of knowledge. Knowledge is power. Learn everything, and as you do that, you will find the path that you want. But don't just copy. Try to learn as much as possible.
Okay.
Yes.
Now I want to ask this question,
Hmm.
and this could be, let's say, I would say the finale, but something like that. It's almost like till the end. We're almost the end of the interview.
Mm-mm.
Is there any specific question
Mm-hmm.
that you wish we would have asked you?
I don't know. That's an interesting question. I never thought of that. No, man. I like this conversation. I like how deep it went. Talking about art and the value of art, because that's honestly, man. Like for me, animation, and this is something I studied in university. There's a whole field in philosophy called aesthetics. What makes a thing beautiful, and I really think that a concern for beauty and what's beautiful is the thing that should dominate the mindset of an artist. You're always trying to make something look good, and this question about is it popular or is it by the experts? Is there a standard or is there no standard? These questions they need to preoccupy the creative who wants to create something beautiful. And I think the main goal is to create beauty. And so I think the conversation we had was great actually. And no question is missed. Bilaks. If there is a question that you want to ask still, you can still ask me. But I think this was great.
So this is our last question, which is we usually because it's this question came from the name of the podcast itself.
Uh-huh.
So from your perspective, in one word or one sentence, what would bridge the gap
Mm.
between the people and the animation?
I think just learning about the process. Remember, I was telling you about the VHS tape and looking at the
Toy Story, yes,
behind the scenes. I think a lot of people don't know how the thing is done, but if they did know and they knew the blood and tears that goes into making one piece of a clip of animation, I think that would really bridge the gap between the two realms. I think
and he'll understand the communication happens behind that those aspects.
exactly. They would have that empathy. I was telling you that they need to appreciate them. So I think appreciation is what I would say is very important, and that happens by understanding the process. I think if there was some kind of event where people would go and appreciate animation and animation artists, that would be great. to have. Now, in 2 weeks, there's an animation event in Egypt called Animatics. It's a festival. I'll be participating in it. By the way, one of my movies is there, or my shorts, yani. And that
We'll be
event.
supporting.
Thank you. That event, how it brought together artists from the region is very inspiring. And events like that are events that really help raise consciousness about this field. And honestly, man, to be honest, I don't expect everybody to know about it. It's fine. Yani you can't know about everything. You can't be informed about every profession and every field. But it would be great if people understood the process.
What's your take on this? Since you just mentioned that, what's your take on West versus East when it comes to animation? Do you think that the Saudi, more specifically Saudi Arabia, do you think it's getting to a level where it's gonna get to a level where it's gonna be worldwide known, or still we have a long way to go on that perspective?
I think that needs artists to, for that to happen, for it to reach that worldwide influence. We need really good stories written by authentic people who want to write good stories about themselves, about their lives, or at least they're inspired by their lives, by their environment. A lot of artists are copying. See the problem about copying? We always come back to it. They see like a Japanese anime and they're like, "Oh, I want to create Naruto, and he's a ninja, but he's in Saudi." No, create something that looks like your surroundings, or inspired by your surroundings, you know? Even if you synthesize, don't copy. And even when you make something, don't look at something from the US and just try to mimic it. If we have that, and we have artists creating these stories bit by bit, and they work on their craft slowly but surely, something new will come up. We will have our own style. In the East, they develop their own style. France, by the way, French animation is amazing. They develop their own look and feel. We have the Americans, they have their own look and feel. And it all stems from their own culture. Like, for example, American animation is dominated by a need to mimic reality and to draw things in a very like squishy way. Anime in Japan, no, they don't animate too much, but they care about very strong emotions and very strong poses, you know? So every culture highlights a certain thing in animation and emphasizes it, depending on its needs, on its history, on everything. In France, they blend both worlds, but they focus very much on color. French animation is very well colored, and of course, this is because of their background in painting. All great painters, or most, were French. And so, what's going to come out of Saudi? We don't know. Well, time will tell. But it
So-
comes with time and complexity over complexity.
So when it comes to culture-wise, from your
Yes.
perspective, correct me if I'm wrong, so that we haven't yet, again, I'm not very familiar with the industry itself, but we haven't yet reached the level of creating that Saudi style.
Yes, I don't. We're getting there. Inshallah, we're moving steadily, and it looks like the Saudi style does lean towards the East a lot more.
Okay.
Because if you notice, يعني, generally in Saudi, even in the Arab world, there is a tendency towards anime way
Yes.
more than American movies and Disney and stuff like that. There is, but usually there is, and I think there's a, and if you go into like the theory of it, you may find that the Japanese way is more emotional. We're more emotional, social people. They have honor. We also have an honor culture. So that creates a certain kind of tendency in what we appreciate. So Allahu A'lam, we still didn't reach that level. We didn't reach that original look and feel yet. But to be honest, man, people that are on the right path today in Saudi is manga al-Arabiya. And
Manga production, maybe?
not manga production, manga al-Arabiya.
Yes.
And they're the same.
By
يعني
the way,
they're-
Samah Kamel as well from Manga Arabi.
Yes, manga Arabiya, the comics.
Yes.
The guys making manga.
Yes.
These
one of the-
guys, honestly, يعني, Uday Karsour, a friend of mine, he's the person leading Manga Al Arabiya in terms of content, I think, production. They have a model where every artist writes and draws his manga.
Yes.
And so they have very original stories
Yes,
coming
I've-
from the
I've- I've
artist
seen them.
himself.
It's amazing.
Yes, and they're promoting it for free. They're giving out the mangas for free, and some of it is sold as well. But
It's very similar to Captain Majid. If you sorry, Majalat Majid.
Majalat Majid, yes.
Majid magazine.
Yes, I love Majid. By the way, oh yeah, صح. How did I forget that? My dad used to bring Majalat Majid every week to the house. That's also another thing that really inspired me. I used to always read it. And Basim, I don't know if you remember Basim.
Oh, but I heard of it. Yes.
There's Majalat Majid and Basim. These two magazines were very influential on me. And so them doing that and going to the roots of just starting with manga is building something very interesting. They're having now, if you go to Jarir, like our bookstore in Saudi, and you look at all like the manga Al Arabiya area, it's like this big.
Yes.
All these are mangas, you know, all
Yes.
these are stories. Like, so them building this database, building this archive, this library of content or stories is going to make something interesting and original eventually. And it is like, there's a lot of interesting stories there. And yeah, so I think we're on the right track. Manga Al Arabiya are on the right track. And however, we need more artists. We need more animators. We need more people into it. And we need to retain them because a lot of animators, man, they come into the industry, they work, they animate. They don't see that they're getting anywhere. They stop. You know, they go into project management or they do HR. Well, they leave the field. So we need retention, and retention happens by creating a community and supporting the field. We need companies to grow, to support. Yani, I think that will create something interesting and new eventually.
Inshallah.
Inshallah.
Mahmoud Zaini, thank you very much for your time.